Hey guys, welcome back to Gubble. So last time we got through the tutorial world, and this time we're going to go ahead and start the second world. We're going to face some new challenges here, some new tricks. We're going to learn a couple more gameplay mechanics, and I think, if I remember correctly, we're going to find one more tool. And I think we have 4 more tools to discover. So anyway, this level we meet one of the new enemies, and it is that blinking thing in the middle right there, which is a landmine. Now, needless to say, you don't want to touch the landmine because it causes massive damage. However, later in the game, I think maybe once or twice, you'll have no choice but to take damage from 1 or 2 of them. Okay, so what I just did there is what I like to call a quick swap. It's where you have a tool equipped and you go up to another tool and you just hover over it by pressing spacebar for a brief second so that you swap one tool to the next. And you can place the tool exactly where the other one is, because a lot of the things in this game, a lot of the times the tools are used for strategic purposes to block enemies. And that's actually going to be demonstrated in the special Zimbot of this level that is coming up here. I think I do it a little bit better. I'm not sure. It's been about 4 months since I've played this, so yeah, I've had a lot of stuff to do, and I think this is going to be the last video that I do in this series where I record the gameplay and then do the audio later, because now I actually have a little bit of time. Anyway, you probably don't want to hear that. So this is our second special Zimbot, and we are introduced to probably the worst enemies in the game. Now, these guys don't seem so bad now, but I think I'll explain a little bit more about them when it becomes a little bit more relevant, because after I do a quick swap here and get hit, that was a pretty good quick swap. I mean, I took some damage, but it wasn't that bad. I'm going to explain a little bit more about why these enemies are so terrible later on when they become more relevant. So right now, just know that they're a big nuisance. Alright, so we got a little bit of health from that, which is pretty good. I think every special Zimbot gives you health no matter what. Other than that, this level's pretty easy. You just gotta dodge some mines and not fuck up here like I almost did. Basically what you have to do in this game is memorize patterns, and some of the patterns are really easy to get down, like in this level. I mean, you don't really have to do a damn thing in this level, really. You just have to be patient. And being patient is very essential in this game. Like right here, when I missed the platform. Gotta wait and fuck around. I mean, other than that, there's really nothing to this game. If you're on a map where all of the enemies are on fixed paths, it's gonna be incredibly easy. Alright, so you'll notice that we actually have 3 Zimbots to do in this little section of the level. Sometimes there'll be about 3 or 4. I think once there's actually 5, and that's not counting the special Zimbots that you don't have to do unless you want to 100%, which is, I'm going to try to get as close to 100% as I possibly can. Anyway, you see we have those robots up there, and I'll explain a little bit more about why they're so terrible now. These robots, as you can see, they shoot missiles, and that's not very fun. But the worst part about them is that this is one of the few enemies in the game that you can't hover over. That's right, you can't hover over these enemies. You actually have to avoid them. I mean, they can shoot missiles at you, which is annoying, does a lot of damage, and if you try to fly over them, you'll get hit. Other than that, we have these other new enemies, these little flying guys, which are basically, like all the enemies in this game, are just reskins of other enemies. You can fly over them, you can block them with your tools. I mean, a lot of the enemy variation is essentially just palette swaps. Alright, so we cleared those 3 Zimbots. Let's go ahead and save and get our health back. So this level is going to introduce one of the more useful elements of this game, and that is a teleporter, as you can obviously see. But we're not going to concern ourselves with that right now. By now you should understand the general formula of this game. It's just a couple of tools, dismantle things, and you beat the game. Avoid enemies too, that one's crucial. I have to say, I really like the music in this stage. This is the one track that I remembered a lot as a kid. Alright, so we're coming up on the teleporter, and what these do is it teleports you to a fixed location, but you don't know what the location is. You would probably expect to be teleported to the other teleporter up there, but that's not the case. Sometimes these teleporters can teleport you in the middle of harm's way, which is kind of annoying, but you kind of have to expect that. Every time you step into a teleporter or get onto a springboard, you pretty much have to go in there with the notion that you're going to take a hit, which is annoying, but you have to get used to it. Okay, so this section here, we actually have to complete 4 Zimbots before we can progress to the next one. And as I was saying earlier, sometimes 4 will become the standard. It's like 3, 4, 5. But there's this one section I remember, I think it's in World 6 or 7, where you actually have to complete 4 Zimbots to progress, and 2 of those Zimbots have special Zimbots. So if you're trying to 100% and without doing another save and going back to the special Zimbots later, you're going to have to complete 7 Zimbots in order to get past that. That's pretty much the outlier. It's going to become standard to do a couple, like 4 or 5. Right now, we have our next bonus Zimbot, and if I remember correctly, I think this is the 3rd bonus Zimbot. Yeah, it's the 3rd one. Okay. So, right now, you should pretty much know what's going on with these. You just collect the tools, and they're sentient. They go around here, and these, I swear these get more fun as time goes on. But right now, it's just kind of boring. And again, you don't have to get the 5 coin. You don't actually have to complete this to get the reward. I mean, if you 100% it, yeah, you gotta complete it, but still. Alright, so that gave me health, and since my health is full, I don't know, I guess I'll go and pick it up, because you can't just go back to this level and pick up the health when it's convenient. Like I said, save management, health management, it is all a part of Gubble. This Zimbot is going to introduce us to the next tool, and this tool is actually used in a very unique way, despite the fact that it may look completely pointless. And that is the sledgehammer right there. Now, I'll demonstrate the sledgehammer after getting some of these screws out here. Alright, if you can't tell by now, the sledgehammer is used to knock down these stone blocks, which after you hit them a couple times, they become kind of rubbery and it looks kind of ridiculous. And this is actually used in a very unique way later on in the game, because sometimes you'll have to knock down... You can't fly over these blocks, and sometimes you'll have to knock them down to get to a new area, but that area will be swarming with bad guys. So it's kind of one of those things where you have to do it, but you really don't want to. I think there are a couple levels later on, not many, but a couple levels that really utilize that well. Other than that, this level's pretty easy. Every enemy other than the blue guys are on fixed paths, so you just need to dodge the path. I should also note by now how hard it is to stop in this game. When you see me hover and stop, that's because I have my fingers off the directional keys, off the arrow keys, and I'm pressing spacebar. If you still have your finger on the arrow keys while you press spacebar, you will fly in that direction, and it is very precise. It is very precise, and you will probably take a lot of hits because of that. It is kind of a hard thing to master. So, here we're introduced to our next mechanic, and that is stopping time. Now, stopping time would seem to be very helpful, but in this game it's not really, because you don't know when time's going to resume, so it's kind of a guessing game. And another thing to note, when time is stopped, if you hit an enemy, you'll still take damage, so it's kind of a bittersweet power-up. When the game offers it, I usually do not take it, but the game offers it, I think, maybe in 4 or 5 Zimbots, so it's not something that comes up very often. I just did it this time to go ahead and demonstrate what its power is. Other than that, this level's very straightforward. Just, you gotta get the screwdriver, gotta get the hammer, and you gotta dodge a bunch of enemies on fixed paths. Don't worry, a lot of these fixed paths, a lot of these levels with enemies on fixed paths will start going away, because around this time the game starts to think, okay, this guy knows what the fuck to do now, so let's turn up the heat, let's make it really fucking hard for him. And it might not look like it, but this game gets really difficult later on. But right now, we're pretty much on the easy path. You don't really have to do much anything. Here we're introduced to a new enemy, and it is probably the second worst enemy in the game. It's that flying saucer up there on the right. Now, these flying saucers, I will go into what makes them so devilishly terrible later on, but just know that right now they are one of the hardest enemies to dodge in this game, and you'll start to get a feeling for what I mean when I have to go up here and face him. But for right now, we just get to deal with enemies on fixed paths. Oh, how beautiful it is. So this level's pretty straightforward, except for the fact that none of these enemies are in fixed paths. And this guy that I'm trying to dodge here is a nightmare, because usually what we have are paths that have a definite beginning and end, and thus we can predict enemy movement. It's much harder here in an open space where the enemy can go wherever. You'll see him going around in a circle here, and he's just a nightmare to dodge, and there are a lot of levels later on that have paths like that. I guess what you'd call them is full paths, not paths that are like the one I'm on right now. It just makes the game it makes the enemies very hard to predict, and this game, prediction is pretty much half of the battle. But other than that right there, there's not really much to this level. I thought I was going to take a hit there. I can't remember since it's been so long since I recorded this, but a lot of areas like that really prey on your boredom and your patience, and you just can't lose your patience if you want to be able to play this game right. But don't you love the perspective here? The perspective actually comes into play as something that will hinder you, and I think it was intentional. A lot of these 3D isometric games from the 90s kind of had this perspective issue going on, and you kind of have to know what's going on. So up here, these enemies are very interesting. They are, I think I read once somewhere that they're like boiler bots or something like that. But what their gimmick is that they, from what I have experienced, they do not have a fixed speed. They always change their speeds when they change direction, which makes them very hard to predict. And like I said in the last Zimbot, prediction of enemy movement is is key to this game. So I'll probably give up a couple of hits here because of that. And it doesn't help that we're using the drill, which is the slowest tool in the game. So you'll notice it's kind of subtle sometimes, but whenever he goes to a new path, he changes speed. Sometimes this can be good if he's going far away from you and he's going really fast. Sometimes it can be bad when he's going really slow. Like I said, you kind of have to predict everything, and this part gets really difficult, and there are some levels later on where the entire enemy roster consists of these boiler bots. Those are admittedly some of the harder levels. But I have to say, the hardest levels include robots and UFOs. Those are easily the hardest enemies in the game. So now we just have to complete one Zimbot in order to progress. Now this Zimbot has another special Zimbot, and my strategy is always get the special Zimbot out of the way first, because you don't want to go back and do the special Zimbot after you almost completed the level, because some of these special Zimbots get really difficult. Okay, so these are the flying saucer enemies, and you're about to understand exactly what makes them so difficult. Now, I could fly over them right there just fine because they're set to be very low. But now they are high up, and what happens is if I try to hover over them now, I will take a hit. So I have to actually go under them. But their attack is going down to hit the floor, so you have to be very quick about it. And we have invisible paths here. That'll become kind of a nuisance later on, but not right now. So I'm gonna have to try my damnedest to dodge all these guys, and it gets really difficult after a while. Sometimes you have no choice but to give up a hit. Like right here, there's nothing I could have done about that right there. Now just imagine these guys on paths that are not fixed, which is kind of what's going on now. They're pretty sentient. But imagine if they're in an open space without a fixed path. That is when this game gets very difficult, because later on, one of the last levels has a bunch of platforms like that. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to get all these UFOs down so that we will have only one coming back to the base, which is the best I could have done. And then we'll just have to get him out of there. So when you're on a level with these UFOs, you have to be very patient. And sometimes plans do not go as well as you'd think they would. And I just gave up a hit right there because I just wanted to get this level done with. If you can afford to take a hit, I mean, just go ahead and do it. So that was a pretty easy level with the UFOs, but they will get incredibly difficult later on. Now, another strategy I have is not to pick up the health until after the level, because you don't know what could happen when you're doing the level. I could take a bunch of hits in this level, I just don't know. But I mean, other than the special Zimbot, this Zimbot it's not actually that bad. You just have to, again, be aware of what's going on. I think all the enemies here are sentient, so again, you just gotta predict. I'm getting a little bit impatient, and I think I forget to pick up the health here, because I don't know, I don't think I was really thinking straight. But it doesn't really matter because we have a save right over here, which gives us full health. So that's it for Falzigar. Next time we're going to do the next Zimbot, and I'm probably going to be recording my voice live while I'm doing the gameplay, so you get to hear all the clacking of the keyboard, so look out for that.